At one point, the North and South Pole were perfectly perpendicular to the sun. That is to say, the sun was right over the equator. The polar caps were very small. The Earth may have been at a temperature equilibrium because there's no winter and summer. There's no season change. But there was an event that occurred, probably a cosmological event, that pulled the Earth around so that now the North Pole and South Pole lean toward the sun. What's happening on the crust of the Earth is absolutely cataclysmic. Volcanoes and earthquakes and plate shifts and huge tidal waves. And we're talking about stacking the ocean up 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet in the air on one side of the planet.
Wouldn't an event like that wipe out all life?
It almost did. It almost did. It probably wiped out about 95% of life on the surface of the planet.
And this event you're referring to, did this occur over millions of years, or was this a sudden event?
It's an interesting question. There's very little evidence that it would have occurred over millions or even billions of years. We have seen that these events occur suddenly in space. For instance, the Schumacher-Levy comet that struck Jupiter. It was discovered, it was named, and it hit Jupiter within a single man's lifetime.
So you're not talking about catastrophic disasters that happen, say, over decades. You're talking about disasters that happen within weeks or months. Major cataclysm, which literally wipe out all life.
The pre-flood Earth probably had one very large supercontinent containing lush vegetation, seas, rivers, and minor mountains. According to the hydroplate theory, the pre-flood Earth had a lot of subterranean water, about half of what is now in our oceans. This water was in interconnected chambers forming a thin spherical shell, about half a mile thick, perhaps 10 miles below the Earth's surface. Increasing pressure in the subterranean water chamber stretched the overlying crust, just as a balloon stretches when the pressure inside increases. Failure in the crust began with a microscopic crack, which grew in both directions at about 3 miles per second. The crack, following the path of least resistance, encircled the globe in about 2 hours. As the crack raced around the Earth, the overlying crust opened up like a rip in a tightly stretched cloth. The subterranean water was under extreme pressure because of the weight of the 10 miles of rock pressing down on it. So the water exploded violently out of the rupture. Calculations show that all along this globe-encircling crack, fountains of water jetted supersonically over 20 miles into the atmosphere. The spray from this enormous fountain produced torrential rains such as the Earth has never experienced before or after. The Bible states that all the fountains of the great deep burst open on one day. And it describes these events about 4,500 years ago, which we can now tie together scientifically in cause and effect order as the hydroplate theory. The fountains of the great deep and the expanding steam produced violent winds. Some of the water jetting high above the cold stratosphere froze into supercooled ice crystals and produced some massive ice domes, burying, suffocating, and instantly freezing many animals. The high-pressure fountains eroded the rock on both sides of the crack and even threw up the limy contents of many pre-flood seas. huge volumes of sediments settled out of this muddy water all over the earth. These sediments trapped and buried plants and animals, forming the fossil record. The flooding uprooted vegetation, moving it to regions where it accumulated and quickly became coal and oil by processes we can duplicate in the laboratory today. Experiments show that as erosion widened the rupture, its width became so great that the compressed rock beneath the subterranean chamber sprung up, giving birth to the mid-oceanic ridge that wraps around the Earth like the seam of a baseball. The continental plates, the hydroplates, still with lubricating water beneath them, slid downhill away from the rising mid-Atlantic ridge. After the massive, slowly accelerating continental plates reached speeds of about 45 miles an hour, they ran into resistances, compressed, crushed, thickened, and buckled. The portions of the hydroplates that buckled up formed mountains. Those that buckled down formed ocean trenches. This is why these features are generally parallel to the oceanic ridges from which they slid.
So what will unfold during the last weeks? First, a severe wobble. Second, a lean to the left, where the North Pole of Earth tries to evade Planet X, which is coming at Earth in a retrograde orbit from the right. The Earth will be basking north to south in the light of the sun before this falling to the side rolls into the 3 days of darkness. Third, the 3 days of darkness for the northern hemisphere, when the North Pole of Earth continues desperately to escape the North Pole of Planet X, which is pointing directly at the Earth. Fourth, 6 days of sunrise west, while the Earth stops its momentum and returns to an upright position. During these 6 days, the North Pole of Earth will have swung to the right due to momentum. Sixth, the hour of the pole shift when the North Pole of Earth is violently pushed away, ripping the crust from the core of the Earth. Roadways will heave, trains will derail, and bridges will snap and drop, as the Minneapolis Bridge over the Mississippi did on August 2nd, 2007. Dams will fail and sinkholes will appear, such as this one in Guatemala on February 23, 2007. Buildings will implode, dropping into the ground beneath them, such as this one in Germany on March 2, 2009. And gas lines and refineries will explode, such as this Moscow gas line on May 10, 2009. These phenomena are on the increase, but during the last weeks will become an epidemic. So be in your safe locations well before the last weeks.